I saved my brother's life with my kidney. He celebrated by firing me. Big mistake. In family business, there's a simple rule. You're either an asset or a liability. My whole life, they listed me under equipment depreciation. My brother was marketing expenses, costly and pointless. And my father was a CEO who couldn't read a balance sheet until last Tuesday. My name is Marty Donovan, and this is the story of how I ran an audit. Let me paint you a picture of Donovan and Son Freight. The name's technically accurate. Donovan, that's my old man, and Son, that's Stevie. Me? I'm just the freight. The cargo. The thing that actually gets moved while everyone else takes credit for the delivery. I'm 49 years old. Been working in this company since I was 16. Started in the warehouse loading pallets when other kids were worrying about prom dates and college applications. Worked every position from ground level up. Dispatcher, route coordinator, fleet manager, systems analyst. Know every truck in our fleet by its quirks. Number 47 pulls left if you're not careful. Number 12 burns oil but runs like a dream otherwise. Number 33 has a radio that only plays country stations, and nobody knows why. My brother Stevie, he's 42. Joined the company at 25 after Dad paid for his third attempt at a business degree. His official title is VP of Strategic Innovation. I'll translate that for you. He's in charge of picking the color of our business cards and testing every chair at the golf club. Makes sure his office has the right feng shui. His biggest contribution last quarter was suggesting we add a ping-pong table to the break room. We're a freight company. Our drivers are on the road. Nobody uses the break room except the receptionist and the kid who does data entry. Me? I'm Chief Operating Officer. That means I'm the one making sure the trucks actually move, making sure payroll processes, making sure our logistics software doesn't crash during peak season, making sure we don't lose contracts because someone forgot to file the right permits. There was this night, about 18 months back, 2 a.m. I was in the office, which wasn't unusual. That's when I got my real work done, when nobody was around to interrupt with stupid questions. Our entire logistics system went down. Not just slow, completely dead. We had 40 trucks on the road, another 20 scheduled to roll out at dawn, and a major client expecting their shipment by noon. $1 million contract on the line. Insurance claims if we missed deadline. Penalty clauses that would have cost us more than the job was worth. The IT guy we contracted wouldn't answer his phone. Of course not. It was 2 a.m. He had regular people hours, regular people problems. So there I was, crawling under server racks with a flashlight between my teeth, checking every connection, every cable, every switch. Found the problem. Some genius had done an automatic update that conflicted with our routing software. Took me 4 hours to roll it back and patch the system manually. Got everything running by 6 a.m. Trucks rolled out on schedule. Client never knew there was a problem. I went home, showered, changed clothes, came back to the office for the regular 8 a.m. meeting. My father walked in at 9:30 after his personal trainer session, but before his tea time, looked at me and said, "You look tired, Marty. Rough night." Then he laughed. He actually laughed. Like it was funny that I'd been up all night saving his company while he was getting his beauty sleep in his 4,000 square foot house in the suburbs. Want to know where he was that night? Charity gala. $500 plate dinner for some foundation that helps underprivileged kids get into prep schools. Real generous of him. Spending company money to rub elbows with other rich people and feel good about themselves. Stevie was there too, naturally. Probably spent the whole night talking about his vision for synergistic market penetration or whatever business school nonsense they teach you when you take 6 years to get a 4-year degree. My wife Linda was invited to that gala too. She asked if I wanted to go. I told her I had work. She went without me. Came home around midnight. Told me about the speeches and the silent auction and how everyone was so impressed with Stevie's ideas about expanding into new markets. Never asked what I did that night. Nobody did. That's the dynamic. That's always been the dynamic. My father, Patrick Donovan, is 75 years old. Built this company from nothing back when Reagan was talking about morning in America. I respect that. You don't build a successful business without something going on upstairs. But somewhere along the way, he started believing his own press, started thinking that schmoozing clients and playing golf was the same thing as actual work, started thinking the business ran on charisma instead of logistics. He loves Stevie, always has. Stevie's got the right look, tall, good hair, expensive suits that actually fit him, knows how to work a room, can remember everyone's name and ask about their kids. That's valuable in its own way, I guess, but it's not the same as knowing how to keep a company running. There was this board meeting maybe 3 years back. Regional managers, department heads, the works. My father stood up and did his whole patriarch routine, pointed at Stevie and said, "This is the future of Donovan and Son. Stevie's got vision. He sees the big picture." Then he turned to me and said, "Marty here, he's our secret weapon. Best mechanic I ever met. He knows how to make the numbers work." Mechanic, like I was still changing oil in the garage. Like I hadn't designed the entire logistics system we used. Like I didn't personally handle negotiations with our 3 biggest clients. Like I hadn't increased our profit margins by 18% through route optimization that I'd spent 6 months developing. But you know what? I didn't correct him. Want to know why? Because I'd learned a long time ago that my father needed to believe certain things about the world to function. He needed to believe that guys like Stevie, guys who looked good in suits and said impressive-sounding things at meetings, were the ones who mattered. And he needed to believe that guys like me, guys who actually knew how things worked, were just useful tools, wrenches that could be picked up when needed and put back in the toolbox when the job was done. Here's what I figured out. People who believe lies are predictable, and predictable people can be managed. My father believed that work was something dirty, something done by people who couldn't afford not to do it. And money, real money, the kind that came from deals made in clubhouses and boardrooms, that was clean, that was respectable. That's why Stevie was a golden child. He made money look easy. He made it look like it came from being smart and personable, not from grinding through spreadsheets at 2 a.m. or personally fixing a server system because your IT contractor was useless. I let him believe that. Seemed easier. About 5 years ago, our company lawyer sat my father down and told him he needed a succession plan, not for sentimental reasons, for tax purposes, estate planning, asset protection, all the boring technical stuff that keeps wealthy people wealthy after they die. The kind of stuff my father liked to pretend didn't exist until someone in an expensive suit told him it was important. They drew up this document. 237 pages. Business succession plan, they called it. Had every scenario mapped out. What happens if dad dies? What happens if he becomes incapacitated? How ownership transfers? How assets get divided? Buyout clauses? All of it. My father called me into his office on a Wednesday afternoon, dropped this brick of paper on my desk, said, "Marty, you like fine print, right? Give this a read through. Make sure there's nothing stupid in here. Let me know where I need to sign." That was it. That was the whole conversation. Didn't ask me to help plan it. Didn't ask my opinion on how the company should be structured after he was gone. Just told me to proofread it like I was some kind of legal assistant instead of the guy who'd been running the actual operations for 15 years. I took that document home. Read every single word. Took me 3 nights. Linda thought I was crazy. "It's just legal boilerplate," she said. "They're all the same." But she didn't understand. Contracts are like code. Every word matters. Every clause has a purpose. And sometimes the most important things are buried in the middle where nobody bothers to look. Most of it was standard stuff. Transfer of shares upon death. Distribution of assets. Voting rights. Board composition. The lawyers had done a good job making sure everything was buttoned up tight for tax purposes. They'd structured it so Dad's estate wouldn't get destroyed by inheritance taxes. Smart move. Probably saved the family millions in the long run. But then I found it. Page 143. Section 14, subsection B. Key person incapacity clause. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood it correctly. Then I read the supporting sections it referenced. Then I looked up the legal precedents in the footnotes. Then I sat back in my chair and just stared at the ceiling for about 20 minutes. Here's what it said, stripped of all the legal language. The lawyers had identified me, Marty Donovan, the mechanic, the guy who makes the numbers work, as the company's key person. Not Stevie. Not Dad. Me. They'd done their due diligence. Interviewed department heads. Looked at operational metrics. Figured out who actually kept the lights on. And they'd inserted a standard protection clause. If something happened to the key person, if I died, became incapacitated, or was forced out of company, there was an automatic buyout provision. The company had to purchase the key person's shares at book value, not market value. Book value. Stuff Dad and his tax lawyers insisted on to keep the valuation low for estate tax purposes. The clause was meant to protect the company if I got hit by a bus or something. Made sense from a business continuity perspective. But here's the thing. The lawyers had defined forced out pretty broadly. It included termination without cause. It included constructive dismissal. And it included any situation where the company refused to honor contractual obligations to the key person. I sat there looking at that clause, and I understood what I was holding. This wasn't just a legal protection. This was a loaded weapon. And my father was about to sign it without even knowing it existed. Should I have said something? Maybe. Should I have pointed it out? Probably. But here's the thing. I didn't add this clause. I didn't sneak it in. I didn't manipulate anything. The lawyers put it in there because it was standard practice for businesses our size. It was good corporate governance. It protected everyone's interests. It just so happened that my father's contempt for fine print meant he was about to sign a document he hadn't read, and I was about to let him do it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." I didn't understand that quote until that moment. My father's dismissal of me, his assumption that I was just a mechanic who could read contracts, his belief that details were beneath him, all of that was about to become the exact mechanism that gave me leverage. I took the document back to his office the next morning, told him everything looked fine, showed him where to sign. He didn't even skim it, just signed every flag page while talking on the phone with someone about a tea time. 12 signatures. Initialed every page. Notarized it right there with the company notary, who came up from legal. I filed it away. Didn't think about it much after that. Wasn't planning anything. Wasn't scheming. I just knew it existed. Like knowing what a fire extinguisher is. You don't plan to use it, but you know where it is. Life went on. I kept the company running. Stevie kept looking impressive in meetings. Dad kept believing his own mythology. And that document sat in the legal files, a little insurance policy nobody knew I understood. I figured I'd probably never need it. Figured things would just continue the way they'd always been. Me doing the work, them taking the credit, everyone content with their role. I was wrong. The call came on a Tuesday morning. October. One of those crisp fall days where you can smell winter, starting to think about showing up. I was in the warehouse checking on a shipment issue. Driver reported possible damage to a pallet. Wanted to verify before client delivery. Hands dirty, wearing my work clothes, doing the job nobody else wanted to do. Linda called my cell. Her voice was strange. "Tight, you need to come to the hospital. It's Stevie." Drove there thinking accident. Car crash. Maybe he'd wrapped his Porsche around a tree finally. Guy drove like every road was a racetrack. But when I got there, saw Mom in the waiting room, saw Dad's face, knew it was worse than that. Kidney failure. Acute. His own fault. Really. Years of partying, drinking, treating his body like a rental car he'd never have to return. All those strategic innovations in Vegas bars had finally sent him the bill. His kidneys were shot. Not just damaged, completely done. He needed dialysis immediately and a transplant soon, or he'd be dead in months. They'd already run the family through testing. Mom was too old. Dad was too old and had diabetes. I was the last option. They brought me in that afternoon, ran the blood work, did the compatibility screening. Took 6 hours. Sat in a plastic chair reading magazine from 2 years ago, watching people shuffle past in hospital gowns, listening to machines beep, and intercoms paged doctors to places I'd never heard of. Results came back Thursday. I was a match. Perfect match, actually. Doctor said it was unusual. Brothers don't always line up that well genetically. Said it was almost like we were twins. Said it was fortunate. Said the word fortunate. Like he was announcing lottery numbers instead of asking me to give up an organ. They scheduled a family meeting. Conference room at the hospital. White walls. Bad fluorescent lighting. Table that was trying to be wood, but was definitely plastic. Everyone sat down like it was a board meeting. Dad at the head. Mom next to him. Stevie looking pale and scared in a way I'd never seen before. Linda next to me, holding my hand under the table. Doctor laid it out. Stevie needed a kidney within 6 months. Dialysis would keep him alive, but quality of life would be terrible. Transplant list would take years, if he ever made it to the top at all. Living donor was the best option. Faster recovery, better outcomes. And since I was a perfect match, it was really the obvious choice. That word, obvious. Like it was obvious that I should give up part of my body. Obvious that I should take on surgical risk. Obvious that I should be the one to sacrifice, while Stevie got to keep living his charm life. Nobody asked me. Nobody said, Marty, would you consider this? Nobody treated it like a choice. They just presented it as the solution. Here's the problem. Here's Marty, problem solved. Like I was a spare part they'd been keeping around for exactly this purpose. I looked around that table. Mom was crying quietly. Dad was staring at me with this expression I'd seen 1,000 times before, expectation mixed with impatience. Stevie looked hopeful and terrified. Linda squeezed my hand, and I realized something. They'd already decided. All of them. In their minds, I'd already agreed. This meeting wasn't a discussion. It was a notification. So I said the word I'd never said before. Not to them. Not about family. Not about anything that mattered. No. It dropped into room like a stone into still water. The silence spread out from in waves. Dad's face did this thing. Went from expectant to confused to angry in about 3 seconds. What did you say? No, I repeated, kept my voice steady, kept my eyes on his. I'm not doing it. Marty Dash, Mom started, but Dad cut her off. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I have a wife and 2 kids. I can't risk my health. You need to find another donor. The explosion wasn't immediate. That's the thing about my father. He's not a yeller. He doesn't throw things. He goes cold. Ice cold. The temperature in that room dropped about 20 degrees. Risk, he said slowly. You're worried about risk. It's surgery. There are always risks. Infection, complications, recovery time, and after that, living with 1 kidney for the rest of my life. That's not nothing. Your brother is dying. My brother destroyed his own kidneys. I didn't. Wrong thing to say. I knew it the second it left my mouth. But sometimes the truth just comes out. Stevie started crying. Actual tears. Marty, please. I know I messed up. I know I haven't been the best brother. But I'm trying to change. I want to be better. I just need this chance. Linda was squeezing my hand, so hard it hurt. Didn't know if she was supporting me or begging me to reconsider. Couldn't look at her. Mom said, Marty, he's your brother. Family takes care of family. I have my own family to take care of, I said. If something happens to me during surgery or after, Linda and the kids are left with nothing. Nobody's going to take care of them. Dad leaned forward. That's what this is about? Money? You think we wouldn't take care of them? Would you? I looked right at him. You spent 30 years making it clear that I'm just a mechanic. Just the guy who does the dirty work. You think I don't know what happens to me if I can't work anymore? You think I don't know how disposable I am? The silence after that was different. Heavier. Because we all knew I just said the quiet part out loud. The part we'd all been pretending wasn't true. For decades. Dad stood up, 6'2", still imposing even at 75. Looked down at me like I was something he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. Get out, he said quietly. Dad, Dash, Stevie started. Shut up. He didn't even look at Stevie. kept his eyes on me. I need to talk to your brother. Alone. Mom, Linda, and Stevie filed out. Linda gave me this look, worry mixed with something else. Fear, maybe. She knew what was coming. Door closed. Just me and the old man. He didn't sit back down. Stood there with his arms crossed, silent for a long time. Long enough that I almost started talking just to fill the space. But I'd learned that trick from him. Whoever speaks first loses. Finally, he said, I built that company from nothing. You know that, right? I know. Worked 80-hour weeks when you were a kid. Missed birthdays. Missed school plays. Missed everything. You know why? To build something for the family. That's right. For the family. Everything I did was for this family. And now you're telling me that family doesn't matter. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. Your brother needs you, and you're worried about risk. You spend your whole life playing it safe. Marty, that's your problem. You're afraid to take chances. Afraid to be uncomfortable. That's why you'll never be more than what you are. There it was. The real opinion. The thing he'd been too polite to say all these years. I wasn't playing it safe. I just wasn't important enough to risk. I'm not afraid, I said. I'm being realistic. You want me to give up an organ because Stevie couldn't control himself. And you want me to trust that if something goes wrong, you'll take care of my family. But you spent 3 decades showing me exactly how much you value my contribution. So forgive me if I'm not convinced. His face went red. Actually red. You ungrateful little dash. He stopped himself. Took a breath. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Colder. More dangerous. Let me make this very simple for you. If you don't do this, you're no longer my son. You understand me? You'll be nobody. Nothing. I'll cut you out of my will. I'll remove you from the company's succession plan. And I'll fire you from Donovan and Son for sabotage, refusing to help in a family emergency that affects company leadership. You can't do that. Watch me. You'll leave with nothing. No severance. No recommendation. And I'll personally make sure you never work in the city again. Every company we do business with, every connection I have, they'll all know exactly what kind of person you are. The guy who let his brother die because he was worried about himself. That's not fair. Life's not fair, Marty. You want to talk about fair? Fair is doing what your family needs you to do. Fair is being there when it matters. This is the one time I'm asking you to step up and be something more than a mechanic. Are you going to do it or not? I looked at him, really looked at him, saw the anger there, saw the disgust, but also saw something else, certainty. He wasn't bluffing. He would actually do it, would actually destroy my life because I wouldn't give up my kidney to save his favorite son. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental about my father. He didn't love me, probably never had. I was useful. I was functional. But I wasn't valued. And the second I stopped being useful, he'd throw me away without a second thought. I need to think about it. I said finally, you have 24 hours. He walked to the door, opened it, turned back. And Marty, don't forget, everything you have because I gave it to you. I can take it away just as easily. He left. I sat there in that conference room with its fake wood table and its terrible lighting, and I thought about everything I'd built. Thought about my house, mortgage, but mine. Thought about Linda and the kids. Thought about the college fund I'd been building for 15 years. Thought about the life I'd carved out despite being treated like equipment. And I thought about that succession plan. Sitting in a file cabinet in the legal department. Page 143. Section 14, subsection B. I looked out the window. Could see the parking lot. Saw Stevie and Mom standing by Dad's Mercedes. Saw Linda waiting by our Camry. 2 different worlds. 2 different families. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. They'd made sure of that. Give up the kidney or lose everything. Simple math. I sat there until the sun started going down. Sat there until the janitor knocked on the door and asked if I was okay. Told him I was fine. He didn't believe me. Smart guy. Finally got up. Walked out to the parking lot. Linda saw my face and knew. Got in the car without saying anything. Drove home in silence. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Linda was asleep next to me. Could hear her breathing, soft and steady. Could hear the house settling. Could hear a dog barking somewhere down the street. And I thought about that clause. That beautiful, perfect clause that my father had signed without reading. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. I didn't have a plan yet. Didn't know how it would work. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going to be the one who lost everything. Not this time. The war had started. My father just didn't know it yet. 24 hours. That's what he gave me. Might as well have been 24 seconds. We both knew I didn't really have a choice. I went home that night and sat at the kitchen table with Linda. Laid it all out for her. The kidney, the ultimatum, the threat to take everything. She listened without interrupting. That's one of the things I love about her. She knows when to just let someone talk. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Finally said, "What do you want to do?" Not what should I do. Not what's right. What do I want? Like my wants actually mattered in this equation. I want to tell them to go to hell, I said. I want to walk away and let them figure out themselves. But if I do that, we lose the house. We lose everything we've built. The kids' college fund. All of it. She reached across the table and took my hand. Then we'll figure something else out. We always do. But we both knew that wasn't true. I was 49 years old. Jobs in logistics management don't grow on trees, especially not for guys who get fired for refusing to donate organs. My father would make sure of that. He had connections everywhere in this industry. One phone call and I'd be blacklisted. I didn't sleep that night. Lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, thinking about that succession plan gathering dust in the filing cabinet at work. Page 143. Section 14, subsection B. Key person incapacity clause. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something. My father had handed me a weapon 5 years ago. He'd signed it himself. Hadn't read it, hadn't understood it, but he'd signed it. Legal, binding, witnessed and notarized. All I needed to do was load it. Around 4 a.m, I got up, went into my office, pulled out my copy of the succession plan. Yeah, I kept one because I'm the guy who reads a fine print. Read through section 14 again. Then I started drafting. It took me 3 hours to write 2 pages. Had to be perfect. Had to be airtight. Had to sound like standard legal protection, while actually being a loaded trap. The kind of thing that would make sense to sign if you weren't paying attention. The kind of thing my father would dismiss as typical Marty paperwork nonsense. I showed up at his office the next morning at 8 sharp. He was already there, probably hadn't slept either, though for different reasons. Stevie was with him. Both of them looked at me like I was a problem that needed solving. Sat down without being invited. Put my folder on his desk. "I'll do it," I said. The relief on their faces would have been touching if it wasn't so insulting. Like I just agreed to work overtime instead of give up a piece of my body. "But I have conditions," I continued. Dad's face hardened. "Marty Dash, hear me out. You said this is a family emergency. You said it's for the business, to save your visionary, your future president. Fine, I agree. But you're asking your chief operating officer, your key personnel, to undergo major surgery. That's a business risk. Get to the point." I pulled out the succession plan, dropped it on his desk, watched his face when he recognized it. "Remember this? You signed it 5 years ago. Section 14B defines me as a key person. Says if I become incapacitated, the company has to buy out my shares. Standard protection clause. So I want to add an addendum. Simple one. It just connects my surgery to this clause. If the company refuses to cover any medical or financial damages related to this operation, it triggers the same buyout provision. Constructive dismissal. Protection for Linda and the kids if something goes wrong. Pulled out my 2 pages. Slid them across the desk. Watched him scan them. Watched his eyes glaze over at the legal language. Watched him dismiss it as exactly what I knew he would. Typical Marty paranoia. Typical Marty need to complicate simple things with paperwork. Stevie actually laughed. Dude, we're not going to screw you over. You're acting like we're the enemy here. I'm acting like someone who has a family to protect. This is standards way. You wanted me to do this. I'm doing it. I just wanted in writing that you'll cover the associated costs. That's reasonable, right, Dad? My father stared at me. I could see him calculating. Could see him weighing the delay of arguing against the benefit of getting what he wanted. Could see the contempt in his eyes. Look at Marty. Can't even save his brother without turning it into a contract negotiation. Fine, he said. Didn't even read it. Just picked up his pen and signed. Right there, both pages. Dated it. Had his secretary notarize it on the spot. Stevie signed as witness. Grinning like I'd just done him the biggest favor in the world. Thanks, bro, seriously. I know this is scary, but I promise I'll make it worth it. When I'm running this company, you'll see. Things are going to change. I took my copy, folded it carefully, put it in my briefcase. I'm sure they will. There's this Hemingway quote. The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. But Hemingway was an idiot who shot himself in the head. The real way to find out if you can trust somebody is to give them exactly what they want and see what they do with it. Surgery was scheduled for the following Tuesday. 5 days of prep. Tests. Consultations. Doctor explaining the procedure. The risks. The recovery time. 6 weeks minimum before I could return to work. Might be longer depending on complications. 10% chance of serious complications. 1% chance of dying on the table. Linda held my hand through all of it. Never said I told you so. Never said we should run. Just held my hand and helped me fill out the forms. The kids didn't really understand what was happening. Tommy was 15, Sarah was 12. Told them Uncle Stevie was sick and needed help. They asked if it would hurt. I lied and said no. Night before the surgery, my father called, not to check on me, not to say thanks or wish me luck, to remind me that the company lawyer would have documents ready for my signature when I got back. Something about restructuring my role while I recovered, making sure operations ran smoothly in my absence. I said that sounded fine. Hung up, took 2 sleeping pills, and hoped I'd wake up. The surgery took 6 hours. General anesthesia. They go in through your side, work around your ribs, cut out the kidney, close you back up. Modern medicine. Routine procedure. Happens every day. I woke up in recovery around 7 p.m. Everything hurt. Not just the incision site, everything. Like my whole body was protesting what had been done to it. Felt like I had been hit by a truck. Felt like that truck had then backed up and hit me again. Linda was there, sitting in one of those terrible hospital chairs that's somehow worse than just standing. She smiled when she saw my eyes open. Hey, you made it. Where's Dash? I tried to talk, but my throat was raw from the breathing tube. Stevie's in surgery now. They took your kidney straight to him. Doctor said it went perfectly. Of course it did. My kidney was perfect, just like everything else about me. Perfectly functional, perfectly useful, perfectly disposable. Your family's in the waiting room, Linda said. Met my parents. Not visiting me, visiting Stevie. Waiting to hear if their favorite son would survive. I closed my eyes, drifted back to sleep, dreamed about drowning. They kept me for 3 days. Standard monitoring. Make sure the remaining kidney was functioning properly. Make sure infection didn't set in. Make sure I didn't die from complications. Nobody visited except Linda. Not my parents. Not Stevie. Though he was in recovery too, so that made sense. Not even a phone call. Just silence. 3rd day, they discharged me. Gave me a prescription for pain medication and a list of restrictions. No heavy lifting for 8 weeks. No driving for 2 weeks. Follow-up appointment in 10 days. Call immediately if I experience fever, unusual pain, or bleeding. Linda drove me home, helped me into bed, set up the pain pills and water on the nightstand. Our bedroom suddenly felt like a hospital room. Sterile, temporary, like I was just waiting to either recover or die. That's when the bills started arriving. See, here's something they don't tell you about living organ donation. Insurance companies have this neat little loophole. The recipient's insurance covers the transplant surgery itself, but the donor's complications? That's on the donor's insurance. And my insurance, the standard company plan, not the executive platinum plan that Stevie had a high deductible and 20% copay on major procedures. First bill, hospital stay, $14,000. Second bill, surgical team, $23,000. Third bill, anesthesia, $8,000. Fourth bill, post-op complications. Yeah, I developed an infection, needed additional treatment, $12,000. Fifth bill, follow-up care and medications, $6,000. Plus about 20 smaller bills for things like lab work and imaging and consultations with specialists. Total, $84,647. I sat at the kitchen table looking at these bills spread out in front of me like some kind of terrible poker hand. 84 grand. More than Linda made in 2 years working part-time at the school. More than our emergency fund. More than we could afford. Called the company benefits administrator. Nice lady named Carol who'd always been sympathetic to the operational staff. Explained the situation. Asked if there was any way the company could help with these costs. She sounded genuinely upset. Said she'd look into it. Said she'd talk to accounting. Said she was sorry this was happening. 2 days later she called back. Said she'd spoken with the CFO. Said the company's position was that this was a personal medical procedure, not a work-related injury. Said they couldn't set a precedent of covering employees' voluntary medical expenses. Said her hands were tied. I asked if she'd mentioned that I donated to the VP. She said yes. She said they were aware. She said it didn't change the company policy. Hung up. Looked at the addendum in my briefcase. The one my father had signed. The one that specifically said the company would cover medical and financial damages related to this operation, or it would trigger the buyout clause. Not yet. Timing had to be perfect. Recovery was hell. The infection made everything worse. Fever for 2 weeks. Antibiotics that made me so sick I couldn't keep food down. Lost 18 pounds in a month. Looked like I had been through chemotherapy instead of surgery. Linda took time off work to take care of me, which meant we were losing her income too, which meant the bills were piling up even faster. Tommy and Sarah were scared. Could see it in their eyes when they looked at me. Their dad, who'd always been solid, always been reliable, suddenly looked breakable. 6 weeks after the surgery, I was finally cleared to return to work. Still weak, still in pain when I move wrong, but mobile, functional, useful again. Got a call from my father's secretary of the day before I was supposed to come back. They were throwing a party. Celebration of Stevie's recovery and his 10-year anniversary with the company. Country club, Saturday night. Formal attire. My attendance was expected. 10 years. Stevie had been with the company for 10 years. I'd been there for 33. But sure, let's celebrate his decade of strategic innovation. The country club looked exactly like you'd expect. Valet parking. Crystal chandeliers. Ice sculptures shaped like freight trucks. Someone thought that was clever. About 100 people. Clients. Business associates. Family friends. All dressed like they were attending a wedding. I wore my old suit. Only one I had that still fit after losing all that weight. Linda looked beautiful in a dress she'd bought at Target. We walked in together and immediately felt like we didn't belong. Stevie was holding court in the center of the room. Tan. Healthy. Laughing. Looked like he'd spent the last 6 weeks at a spa instead of recovering from major surgery. People kept congratulating him. Kept telling him how brave he was. How grateful they were he'd pulled through. Nobody mentioned me. Nobody even looked at me. Found a table in the back. Sat down. Linda squeezed my hand under the table. We don't have to stay long. But we did, because I needed to see this. Needed to see what I'd given up my kidney for. Dinner was served. Fancy stuff. Tiny portions on huge plates. The kind of food that costs a fortune and leaves you hungry. I could barely eat. Stomach was still sensitive from the antibiotics. After dessert, the speeches started. Toast after toast. People praising Stevie. Praising my father. Praising the company. talking about family values and loyalty and commitment. Then Stevie stood up, tapped his glass, smiled that $1,000,000 smile. His speech was everything I expected and worse. Thanked everyone for their support, talked about his journey, made the kidney failure sound like some kind of spiritual awakening instead of the consequence of years of partying. Then he got to the part about me. And, of course, I have to thank my brother Marty. Couldn't have done this without you, bro, literally. People laughed. He raised his glass. To Marty's left kidney, the only part of him that's ever made a real impact on company strategy. The room erupted. Laughter. Applause. People turning to look at me, grinning, waiting for me to laugh along with the joke. I smiled, raised my glass, played the part. What else was I going to do? But Stevie wasn't done. Seriously, though, this whole experience has taught me a lot about sacrifice, about family, about what really matters. And it's made me realize I need to step up, need to take on more responsibility, need to be the kind of leader this company deserves. My father stood, walked over to Stevie, put his arm around his shoulders. The two of them standing there like a Norman Rockwell painting of father-son perfection. Speaking of leadership, Dad said, his voice carried across the room. Practiced, rehearsed. I have an announcement. Stevie's been given a second chance at life. And I'm giving him a second chance to prove what I've always known, that he's the future of this company. Effective immediately, I'm promoting him to president of Donovan and Son Freight. President. The room exploded with applause. People standing, cheering. Stevie looking humble and grateful and ready to lead. President. While I was home recovering from giving him my kidney, they'd been planning this, restructuring the company, moving pieces around the board. And nobody thought to mention it to me. Linda's hand tightened around mine. She knew what I was thinking, knew what this meant. I was being pushed out, not fired. That would look bad. Just made irrelevant, diminished, reduced to nothing while my brother stepped into the spotlight wearing my organ. The party continued. People congratulating Stevie, shaking his hand, telling him how well-deserved this was. The future looked bright. The company was in good hands. I waited until the crowd thinned out, until most people were drunk or had left or were busy networking. Then I walked over to where Dad and Stevie were standing. Two kings surveying their kingdom. Pulled out the envelope I brought. Inside was a copy of the addendum and a bill. Not all the bills, just one. The hospital statement. $84,647. Handed it to my father. Need to talk to you about this. He looked at it like I'd handed him a used napkin. Didn't open it. Just held it away from his body, like it might contaminate him. What is this, Marty? Medical bills from the surgery. And the addendum you signed agreeing the company would cover costs related to my donation. Stevie's face changed. Went from celebration mode to defensive in half a second. Are you serious right now? You're trying to build a company for saving my life. I'm asking the company to honor the agreement your father signed, the one that said medical costs would be covered. Dad opened the envelope, glanced at the bill. His expression went from confused to disgusted. This is ridiculous. You donated your kidney as a gift. Family helping family. Now you want to charge us for it. I want the company to honor its contractual obligation. Read the addendum. You signed it. I signed something you pressure me into signing when I was worried about my son dying. This is manipulation, extortion. People were starting to notice, starting to quiet down, starting to watch. Stevie stepped closer, lowered his voice but kept the edge in it. You're really going to do this? At my celebration? You're going to try to squeeze money out of the family? Out of the company? What kind of petty, small person does that? The word petty hung in the air. Small. That's what I was to them. Small. Petty. Someone who counted pennies while they made the big decisions. My father folded the papers, handed them back to me. The company accountant will not be cutting you a check, Marty. This was a personal decision, a family matter. Try and make the company pay for this is corporate fraud. Try to pursue it, and I'll have legal involved so fast it'll make your head spin. This is a signed contract. This is a piece of paper you manipulated me into signing under duress. No court would uphold it. And if you embarrass this family by trying, I'll fire you for attempting to defraud the company. Do you understand me?" I understood perfectly. Understood that they'd never intended to honor the agreement. Understood that to them, I'd always been the mechanic, the guy who does what he's told and doesn't complain. Understood that my father had just said the magic words: corporate fraud, fire you, official threat of termination, refusal to honor a signed contract, constructive dismissal. The trap had just snapped shut. They were inside it. They just didn't know it yet. I took the papers back, folded them carefully, put them in my jacket pocket, looked at my father, looked at Stevie in his expensive suit with his new title and his healthy kidneys, one of them mine. Understood, I said quietly. I apologize for bringing this up at an inappropriate time. Congratulations on the promotion, Stevie. Dad. Turned and walked away. Found Linda. Told her we were leaving. She didn't ask questions. Just got our coats and followed me out. In the car, she finally spoke. What just happened? They refused to pay. Threatened to fire me for fraud. Marty Dash. It's okay. I pulled out into traffic. My hands were steady on the wheel. My voice was calm. It's better than okay. They just gave me everything I need. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Or maybe I just finally found it. That night, I pulled out my copy of the addendum, read it again, made sure every word was exactly as I'd written it, made sure my father's signature was clear, made sure the notary stamp was visible. Then I drafted an email, professional, formal, requesting payment of medical expenses for the signed agreement, attached copies of all relevant documents, sent it to the company's head accountant and chief legal counsel, CC'd my father and Stevie, waited. Response came Monday morning. Email from my father. Subject line, denied. All caps. Sent from his personal account, but CC'd to company counsel, the accountant, and me. The email was short, direct, officially refused to pay. Called the addendum invalid. Called my request an attempt at corporate fraud. And ended with this. Consider this your formal termination notice. Effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Your final paycheck will be mailed. I read it 3 times. Printed it. Saved it to multiple drives. This wasn't just an email. This was a signed confession. Written proof of constructive dismissal. Written proof of refusal to honor a contractual obligation. Written proof that everything in my addendum had just been triggered. Called my lawyer, guy I'd quietly retained 3 weeks earlier, estate planning attorney who specialized in corporate law. Told him it was time. He'd been waiting for this call. You're sure? They just fired me in writing for asking them to honor a contract they signed. Then we proceed. I'll file the paperwork this afternoon. Board meeting is scheduled for next Monday, 9 a.m. That week was the longest of my life. Stayed home. Didn't answer calls from the company. Didn't respond to messages from Stevie asking what I was playing at. Didn't engage with my father's lawyer who called threatening legal action for defamation and breach of fiduciary duty. Just waited. Let them think I was beaten. Let them think I'd slunk away to lick my wounds. Let them prepare their defense against my wrongful termination suit, which is what they thought this was about. They had no idea. Linda asked me repeatedly if I knew what I was doing, if I was sure, if this would work. I told her it would. Told her to trust me. Told her that for once in my life, I'd read the fine print and everyone else hadn't. Monday morning came. My lawyer picked me up at 8:30. We drove to the company headquarters. Same building I'd worked in for 33 years. Same parking lot. Same entrance. But this time I wasn't going to my office. I was going to the boardroom. Security tried to stop us. My lawyer showed them the court order. Emergency board meeting. Mandatory attendance. They had to let us in. The boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Big table. Expensive chairs. Window overlooking the warehouse. My father sat at the head. Stevie next to him. Their lawyer on the other side. Guy I'd never met. Probably cost $500 an hour. They looked surprised to see me. Shocked, even. My father started to speak, but my lawyer held up a hand. Gentlemen, thank you for attending. I'm Robert Chun, counsel for Martin Donovan. We're here today regarding the business succession plan dated 5 years ago, specifically Section 14, subsection B, the key person incapacity clause. Dad's lawyer leaned forward. This is about wrongful termination. My client is prepared to offer settlement dash. This isn't about wrongful termination, Chin interrupted. This is about a forced buy-sell agreement. The room went quiet. You could hear the air conditioning. Could hear someone's watch ticking. Excuse me. Dad's voice was dangerous. Low. Chin opened his briefcase, pulled out documents, slid them across the table. The succession plan you signed identifies Martin Donovan as a key person for operational continuity. The addendum you signed 2 months ago, Mr. Donovan, links his organ donation surgery to this clause. Your written refusal to honor that addendum, combined with your termination of Mr. Donovan, constitutes constructive dismissal under the terms of the original agreement. That's absurd. That clause is for if something happens to Marty, for if he dies or becomes disabled. The clause, Chin said calmly, activates if the company knowingly breaches contractual obligations to the key person, resulting in constructive dismissal. Your email last Monday is explicit proof of both breach and termination. You, sir, activated this yourself. Stevie was reading the documents. His face had gone pale. Dad, this says dash. I know what it says. Dad snapped, turned to his lawyer. Tell them this is nonsense. Tell them we'll fight this. Their lawyer was reading too. Reading fast. His expression changed as he went through the pages. Patrick, did you sign this addendum? Under duress. He manipulated me. That's not what the notarized witness statement indicates. Did you read it before signing? Silence. Dad's jaw worked. He couldn't lie under oath. Couldn't claim duress when the signature was clean and clear. Chun continued. Here's what's interesting, gentlemen. The succession plan you signed was designed to minimize estate taxes. You insisted on using book value for all buyout calculations, not market value. Book value, asset-based valuation. So Donovan and Son Freight has a market value of approximately $8 million. But its book value, the net worth of physical assets minus liabilities, is substantially lower. The formula you approved values the company at. Chun consulted his papers. $247,000. The number hit the room like a bomb. Stevie actually stood up. That's impossible. This company is worth dash. Worth whatever the contract says it's worth. And the contract says book value. Your father insisted on it. For tax purposes. Dad was staring at the documents. Reality finally sinking in. He'd structured the whole succession plan to avoid estate taxes. Had insisted on book value to keep the valuation low. Had never imagined someone would actually use that formula against him. Chin pulled out a check, set it on the table. Per the forced buy-sell agreement activated by your breach of contract, my client is required to purchase controlling interest in Donovan and Son Freight at book value. This check, for $247,000, represents full payment. You can't do this, Dad said, but his voice was weak now, uncertain. It's not a negotiation, Mr. Donovan. It's execution of a contract you signed. You're legally obligated to sell. Immediately, refuse, and we'll seek a court order. Either way, ownership transfers today. Their lawyer was nodding slowly. Patrick, he's right. This is airtight. You signed it. The addendum is valid. The email is proof of breach. The buyout clause is clear. If we fight this, we'll lose and incur additional legal costs. The room was silent for a long time. Could hear traffic outside. Could hear someone walking past in the hallway. Could hear my father's breathing getting heavier. Finally, Stevie spoke. His voice was small, broken. We're family. You can't do this. We're family. I stood up, walked slowly around the table, stood behind the CEO's chair. My father's chair, the chair he'd sat in for 40 years while I did all the work. Put my hands on the back of it, looked at him, really looked at him. Saw an old man who just realized he'd outsmarted himself. Saw a narcissist who'd never bothered to read the fine print because he assumed details were beneath him. Saw a father who'd never loved me, never valued me, never seen me as anything more than a useful tool. No, I said quietly. We were family. Past tense. Family doesn't threaten to destroy each other. Family doesn't demand organs and then refuse to honor their promises. Family doesn't fire people for asking to be treated fairly. Walked around to the front of the chair. Sat down. It was comfortable. Expensive leather. Bill for someone important. You spent my whole life telling me I was just a mechanic. Just the guy who makes things work. You were right. I am that guy. I'm the guy who reads the contracts. Who understands the systems. Who knows how all the pieces fit together. And you just gave me every single piece. Looked at Chun. Makes your accounting processes that medical bill. The $84,000. Turns out it's completely legitimate when you're the CEO. Looked at Stevie. Your new title is effective immediately. Unemployed. Security will escort you out. Don't worry. I'll send your personal items to your home address. Shouldn't take long. I don't think you actually kept anything work-related in your office anyway. Looked at my father. He was staring at me with something I'd never seen before. Not anger. Not contempt. Fear. He was afraid of me. Finally, you have 1 hour to clear out your desk, I said. After that, you're trespassing. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. You're making a mistake. You'll destroy this company. You don't know how to run the business side. You're just operations. You're right, I said. I'm just operations. I'm just the guy who's been running this company for 30 years while you played golf. I'm just the person every department head actually reports to. I'm just the one who knows every client, every contract, every system. Must be terrified to realize a mechanic understands your precious business better than you ever did. Chin stood. Gentlemen, the paperwork will be filed with the state this afternoon. Ownership transfer is effective immediately. Mr. Martin Donovan is now sole proprietor of Donovan and Son Freight. This meeting is adjourned. My father sat there, didn't move, looked at the table, at the check, at the documents that had just stolen his life's work, at me. I built this company, he said quietly. I built it from nothing. I know you did, and it was impressive. 40 years ago. But you stopped building it about 20 years back. Started coasting. Started thinking the company ran on your reputation instead of actual work. You forgot that businesses are built on operations, not charisma. On systems, not speeches. On people who show up at 2 in the morning to fix servers, not people who show up at 9:30 after personal training. Stood up, walked to the door, turned back. The name staying the same, by the way. Donovan and Son Freight. Still technically accurate. I'm a Donovan, and I have a son. The name works fine. Security was waiting outside. I nodded to them. They entered the boardroom. My father and Stevie were escorted out. Watched them walk past their own portraits in the hallway. Past the photos of company milestones. Past 33 years of my work that they'd taken credit for. Chun packed up his briefcase. That went smoothly. I'll file everything this afternoon. You should have full legal control by end of business day. Thank you. Can I ask you something? When did you know this would work? 5 years ago, when he threw that succession plan on my desk and told me to make sure there was nothing stupid in it. I read every word. He signed it without reading a single page. That's when I knew that someday, eventually, his contempt for details would be what destroyed him. Chin smiled. You're a patient man. No, I'm just a mechanic. I know how machines work, and I know that every machine has a weak point. You just have to know where to look. He left. I stood in the empty boardroom, looked out the window at the warehouse, at the trucks, at the loading docks where I'd started 33 years ago. The business wouldn't skip a beat. Operations would continue exactly as they had, because I'd been running them all along. The only difference was now I get credit for it. Pulled out my phone. Called Linda. Hey, I said when she answered. It's done. How do you feel? Tired. Lighter. Like I just put down something I've been carrying for 33 years. Come home. I'll make dinner. The kids want to hear everything. I'll be home in an hour. Love you. Love you too. And Marty, I'm proud of you. Hung up, sat in the CEO's chair for a few more minutes. Thought about Marcus Aurelius again. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. My father's contempt had been my education. His dismissal had been my protection. His greed had been his downfall. He built the trap himself, signed it into existence, and walked right into it, while laughing at the guy holding the blueprints. People who don't read the fine print always assume the people who do are trying to cheat them. They never realize we're just the ones who remember what was actually agreed to, walked out of the boardroom, through the hallways, past my old office, former office now. I'd be moving into the big one, past the break room with Stevie's ping pong table that nobody used, past the receptionist who looked confused but said congratulations anyway. Got in my car, drove home, and for the first time in 33 years, I didn't think about work. Didn't worry about what crisis would be waiting for me tomorrow. Didn't calculate how many hours until I could sleep. Just drove. Windows down. Radio playing something I didn't recognize. Late afternoon sun, making everything golden. I'd given up a kidney. Given up years of my life, working for people who didn't value me. Given up dignity and pride, and the chance to tell them what I really thought. But I gained something better. I gained everything. And I'd done it by being exactly what they'd always dismissed me as, the guy who reads a fine print, the guy who pays attention to details, the mechanic who knows how machines work. Turns out, families are machines too, and every machine has a breaking point. I just found theirs.